So here we will be discussing about diabetes in pregnancy, and this is the part 1 of the lecture. Now this diabetes in pregnancy is associated with pregnancy induced hypertension, and those females with diabetes in pregnancy, the incidence of PIH is around 8%, and it is around 3 times more in over diabetes mellitus, that is 24%. Now, for carbohydrate metabolism in pregnancy, fetus is dependent on the mother for its glucose requirement, and it takes glucose through GLUT1 and GLUT3 receptors via placenta through facilitated diffusion. Insulin secretion is increased, as well as there is insulin resistance also due to certain hormones, most commonly due to HPL or the human placental lactogen, which is the main hormone. Other than that, there is also a role of progesterone, estrogen, placental growth factor, CRH, and cortisol in insulin resistance. And here is one MCQ, that SCG has no role in insulin resistance. So if there is increased secretion and increased insulin resistance, this can lead to a condition known as gestational diabetes mellitus if glucose is more deranged. So for diagnosing diabetes in pregnancy or gestational diabetes mellitus, we do a screening test at 24 to 28 weeks of gestation, because during this gestational period the insulin resistance is maximum, and this is known as glucose stress test. There are various screening tests available, and this test can be used for the screening of GDM. Now, if there is hyperglycemia, means glucose level is high, as in GDM or over diabetes mellitus, this hyperglycemia can release free radicals which are phytotoxic and can cause congenital malformation. As the glucose level is already high in patient of over diabetes mellitus from the period of organogenesis, that is first trimester, so there is risk of congenital malformation in patients with diabetes or over diabetes mellitus, but this is not seen in patients with gestational diabetes mellitus, because this hyperglycemia is occurring after 24 to 28 weeks of gestation. Now, what is fetal hypoglycemia? Fetus is dependent on mother for its glucose requirement. So if mother is in fasting state, then this can cause hypoglycemia in the fetus, and as soon as she takes meal, means postprandial hyperglycemia occur, and this occurs due to insulin resistance, while glycosuria is normal in pregnancy. So what are the carbohydrate metabolism or the physiological changes? This is fetus fasting hypoglycemia, postprandial hyperglycemia, exaggerated starvation ketosis, renal glycosuria, and hyperinsulinemia. So these changes can be seen in pregnancy. Now, diabetes in pregnancy is divided into two parts. First one is the gestational diabetes mellitus, also known as over diabetes, and next is gestational diabetes mellitus. Gestational diabetes mellitus, in which normal glycemic before pregnancy becomes diabetic due to insulin resistance after 24 to 28 weeks of pregnancy, while in pregestational diabetes mellitus, patient is a known case of diabetes mellitus prior to pregnancy, and the blood glucose levels are high from the day 1 of pregnancy. So free radicals are formed from day 1 of pregnancy, and there is risk of congenital malformation, while this does not occur with patients of gestational diabetes. 10 to 14% patients of gestational diabetes mellitus, 10 to 14% patients of diabetes mellitus, among them 90% can develop GDM, while 10% can land into pregestational diabetes mellitus. Now, what is the role of HbA1c? How can we predict the blood sugar levels based on the HbA1c levels? So if HbA1c levels are less than 6, then blood sugar is around 120. If the level is 7, then 150 is added, means we have to add 30 as we increase HbA1c levels. So say less than 6, 120, 7, 150, 8, 180, 9, 210, and at 10 the blood sugar levels may be as much as 240. So there is one classification system known as Prestella-White classification, through which we divide the patient based on the age and duration of diabetes into type A or class A, type non-type A or non-class A. So here type A is the gestational diabetes mellitus, and here we divide the patient into two parts based on the management we have given. If A1 is there, type A1 means GDM but well controlled on diet only. So these patients are GDM on diet, while A2 is GDM controlled either by OHAs or insulin. Then comes type non type A or class non A. These patients are pre-gestational diabetes patients, and here D, F, R, H, and T are important. D for diabetes with retinopathy, and this is NPDR, means non-proliferative diabetic retinopathy or benign retinopathy. F for nephro, so diabetes along with nephropathy is F. R for retinopathy, but here retinopathy is proliferative retinopathy. And then H for if there is diabetic patient along with heart disease, then it comes in H. And T for diabetes with renal transplantation history. Now we have discussed A, D, F, R, H, T, but what is B and C? So this depends on the age and duration of the patient. If age of the patient is more than 20 years and the duration of diabetes is less than 10 years, then it is class B. And class C is when the age is less than 20 years, that is 10 to 19 years, and the duration is also more, that 10 to 19 years. So this is Prestella White classification. Now coming to screening of gestational diabetes mellitus. So IADPSG means International Association of Diabetes in Pregnancy Study Group, and American Diabetes Association gave this criteria. So in this, another one is given by ACOG, which is a two-step approach, while IADPSG is a single test approach. So in IADPSG or ADA criteria, we do OGTT, fasting 1 hour and 2 hour, and if the values more than 1 are abnormal, then it is considered as diabetic. So here the test we do is between 24 to 28 weeks of pregnancy, and a fasting of 8 hours is needed. First of all, when the patient came in the morning, we collect first fasting blood sample. Then we advise patient to have 75 grams of oral glucose mixed with water is given after fasting blood sample, and two blood sugar levels are checked 1 hour and 2 hour apart, and there are total 3 samples taken. Now for the fasting sample, if the fasting sample is more than 92, or 1 hour sample is more than 180, and 2 hour sample is more than 153, if either more than one value is abnormal, then it is considered as gestational diabetes mellitus, and this is a single test approach. Now coming to ACOG two-step approach. This two-step approach is, first we have to do a GCT, also known as a glucose challenge test, which is a screening test in which we do testing of blood sugar level at 24 to 28 weeks of pregnancy. Fasting is not required. We irrespective of previous meals, we advise 50 grams of oral glucose. So in previous test we took 75 grams of oral glucose, but here only 50 grams of oral glucose is taken, and a 1 hour sample 1 hour value is calculated. So if the levels of GCT is less than 140, then patient is non-diabetic, and if the levels are more than 200, then a diagnosis of over-diabetes mellitus is made. But if the levels are between 140 to 200, then we have to go for step 2, that is diagnostic test or the glucose tolerance test, also known as OG3R OGTT, which is a diagnostic test in which we tell the patient to come on the next day, and 8 hours fasting is needed. Then we check fasting levels 1 hour, 2 hour, and 3 hour blood sugars after administering 100 grams of oral glucose. Then if the levels are if more than 2 levels are abnormal, then this is a diabetic patient. So the fasting value, if more than 95, 1 hour more than 180, 155 second hour sample, third hour sample 140. So if more than 2 values are abnormal, then this is diagnostic of gestational diabetes mellitus. Now what ACAG recommends, that we have to do gestational diabetes screening at first visit only, because Indian patients are considered as high risk, and early screening in high risk patient is on first antenatal visit. Then we have to repeat the test at 24 to 28 weeks of pregnancy. High risk of developing GDM in Indian females, because if the BMI is more than 25, this is a high risk case, and in Asian American females BMI of more than 22 is considered as a high risk, plus any one of the following. Means if there is previous history of gestational diabetes mellitus, or family history of diabetes, previous history of delivering a baby at more than 4 kg birth weight, and previous history of stillbirth is there. So IOD history, macrosomic baby, diabetes in family, diabetes in mother, hypertensive female, deranged lipid profile, PCOS female, age more than 40 years, and HbA1c more than 5.7 but less than 6.4, means this is coming in pre-diabetic zone. So HbA1c is more than 6.5 is diabetes or pre-gestational diabetes mellitus any otherwise. Now, what are the DIPSI guidelines that we follow in India? Is the DIPSI guideline, which are the national guidelines that are followed in India, in which we do universal screening for gestational diabetes mellitus is performed due to high risk of diabetes mellitus. First screening is done at first antenatal visit, and the second screening is done at 24 to 28 weeks of pregnancy. Here fasting is not needed, and irrespective of the previous meals, we give 75 grams of oral glucose. Now, if the blood glucose levels after 2 hours is more than 140 but less than 200, it is GDM, and if it is more than 200, then diagnosis of pregestational diabetes mellitus is formed. Now, with this 75 grams of glucose, we mix 300 ml of water. We can also mix ice or lemon, and it should be consumed within 5 minutes. But if the patient vomits within 30 minutes, then we have to repeat the test next day. And if patient vomits after 30 minutes, then we have to continue the test, and we have to check the blood sugar levels after 2 hours. Now, what is the minimum gap between two tests? Then the minimum gap between two tests is 2 weeks, and if the patient first antenatal visit is beyond 28 weeks, then just one test is sufficient. Now, pregnant women in community, testing for GDM at first antenatal visits, and if it is more than 140, then diagnosis of GDM is made, and if it is negative, then repeat testing at 24 to 28 weeks is done, and if it is positive, means 2 hour postprandial blood glucose level is more than 140, then we have to manage it as gestational diabetes mellitus. But if the level is lesser, then we have to consider it as normal. So only in negative patient we have to repeat the test at 24 to 28 weeks of pregnancy, and if already the patient is diagnosed with GDM at early gestational age, then there is no need to repeat the test. Now, how will you provide antenatal care to GDM patient? According to national guidelines, we have to do an anomaly scan, which is a level 2 scan at 18 to 20 weeks of gestation, and it is same as all pregnant women. At least 2 growth scans are needed, means first scan is done at 28 to 30 weeks, and another scan we can do at 34 to 36 weeks. There should be a minimum gap of 3 weeks between 2 scan, and because in over diabetes mellitus or gestational diabetes mellitus, fetus can have macrosomia, so growth scans are mandatory. Fetal biometric and amniotic fluid estimation, as there is risk of polyhydramnios, is also done. Now, coming to the number of antenatal visits in A1 patients, means in those patients where blood sugar are controlled on diet, then we have to follow it as a normal patient with following regular antenatal visits. While in patients with GDM, not controlled blood sugar and complications like high BP, then in second trimester we have to tell the patient to come every 2 weeks, and in the third trimester, means 28 weeks onward only, we tell the patient to visit weekly. Now, at each visit, we have to check the BP, because there is association of pregnancy-induced hypertension with diabetes mellitus, and we also check for proteinuria and polyhydramnios. Urine routine microscopy is done in each trimester for UTI, general candidiasis, and asymptomatic bacteriuria. We also do fetal growth monitoring, and fetal monitoring should start from 32 weeks onward, because there is increased risk of intrauterine death and stillbirth. Daily fetal movement count should be done by mother, and advised to lie in left lateral position after meals and keep a count of fetal movements. If the fetal movements are less than 10 in 2 hours, then immediately report to the doctor, and NST and BPS are also advised weekly. Now, what is the role of Doppler? Doppler is not done routinely unless there are chances of uteroplacental insufficiency, such as PIH and intrauterine growth retardation. Now, coming to the management of GDM or gestational diabetes mellitus, the key principle is to maintain a good glycemic control. So we have to keep a good glycemic control and keep the HbA1c levels under check. Now, what are the metabolic goals? The fasting blood sugar should be less than 95, 1 hour postprandial should be less than 140, and 2 hour postprandial should be less than 120. So 95, 140 and 120. HbA1c should be less than 6 to 6.5, and the average capillary blood glucose should be less than 100. So remember this: 95, 140, 120, 6 to 6.5, and average blood glucose levels less than 100 milligrams per day. Now, to calculate the total calories as per pre-pregnancy weight, so we have divided the patient based on the BMI and required total weight gain in pregnancy. So, if patient is having a normal weight, means a BMI between 18.5 to 24.9, then total weight gain range is 11.5 to 16 kg. While if she is underweight, then a slight more weight increment is needed, that is 12.5 to 18 kilograms. In overweight patient, means the BMI is 25 to 30, then total weight gain of 7 to 11.5 is needed. And in obese females, all in class 1, 2 and 3, total weight gain of 5 to 9 kg. So 11.5 to 16, 12.5 to 18, and 7 to 11.5, and 5 to 9. Now the meal is divided into 3 parts, means 3 major meals and 2 to 3 snacks should be divided as carbohydrates 40%, fats 40%, and proteins 20%. Now the saturated fat should be less than 10% and cholesterol should be less than 300 milligrams per day. In pregnant women with GDM, MNT and moderate exercise is advised, and after 2 weeks we calculate the 2-hour postprandial blood glucose. If postprandial blood glucose is less than 120 milligrams per deciliter, then we have to repeat the blood sugar values after 2 weeks at less than 28 weeks of gestation, and after 28 weeks of gestation every week we have to repeat the blood sugar values. But even if after medical nutritional therapy, that is diet and exercise, if the blood glucose levels are high, that is more than 120 milligrams per deciliter, then along with diet we start the patient on insulin therapy, and after 72 hours or more frequently till insulin dose is adjusted to maintain normal blood glucose levels, and then we have to monitor 2-hour postprandial glucose once weekly. Now, how will you what is the drug of choice of diabetes in pregnancy? It is insulin, not OHA. And national guidelines indications for insulin starting are: if the GDM patient, if after 2 weeks of MNT 2-hour blood glucose level is more than 120 milligrams per deciliter, or patient is a case of pre-gestational diabetes mellitus and it is going to get diagnosed at day 1 of pregnancy. The third indication that a pregnant female is having a postprandial blood sugar more than 200, and this is considered as overt patient. So in these patients also we have to start them on insulin. And international guidelines say what are the indications for starting insulin therapy. Metabolic goals should be met, but even if the metabolic goals are met but the estimated fetal weight is more than 90% of the gestational age, means fetus is going to develop microsomia or the abdominal circumference is more than 75% for gestational age, then we have to start insulin. It is given through subcutaneous route. 40 international unit per ml vial is there, and we have to use a premix insulin or in an insulin syringe. 1 ml is equal to 40 international unit is used, and this contains premix insulin contains an intermediate insulin in a ratio of 30 to 70 along with long insulin. One syringe can be used maximum of 14 times, and it should be restored in a refrigerator between 4 to 8 degree of temperature. Now, what is the dose of insulin? So we check the 2-hour postprandial blood glucose level, and based on that we have to start the insulin. If the dose is between 120 to 160, then 4 units insulin is started. 160 to 200, 6 units, and more than 200 directly we have to start 8 units of insulin. Now, insulin injection should be given 30 minutes before meal or before breakfast, and every third day we have to check the fasting blood sugar levels and the 2-hour postprandial. If the fasting blood sugar is more than 95, then we have to add 2 unit insulin before breakfast, and if postprandial blood sugar is more than 120, then 2 unit more are added before breakfast. So total of 4 unit dose is started if both are deranged. Again on third day we measure FBS and 2 hours PP, and we have to keep titrating the dose till the metabolic goals are met, and once metabolic goals are met, then we have to continue the same dose of insulin along with diet. Now, measuring fasting blood sugar and 2-hour postprandial sugar every 2 weeks till 30 weeks of pregnancy, and after 30 weeks of pregnancy, best one is to measure the fasting blood sugar weekly and 2-hour postprandial blood sugar. So after 30 weeks we check blood sugars every weekly. Now coming to oral hypoglycemic agents in pregnancy, OHAs are less potent. They can cross the placenta and can cause hypoglycemia in the fetus. So usually they are not recommended except 2 examples, that is metformin metformin and glyburide, which can be used in pregnancy, and this is indicated if patient refuses insulin, so we can start her on metformin or either glyburide, and they are not given in patients with over diabetes mellitus. They can only be given in patients with gestational diabetes mellitus. Now, what is the difference between metformin and glyburide? Metformin is started in a dose of 500 milligram per day at bedtime. So, a night dose is started, while glyburide is given in a range of 2.5 milligrams to 5 milligrams OD. And metformin can be started, and then we can increase the dose of metformin by 500 milligrams every week. So, we can start her on 500 milligrams OD. Then, in next week, if blood sugars are not controlled, then we can add the dose to 500 milligrams BD. And same occurs in case of glyburide also. Maximum dose of metformin that can be given is 2500 milligrams per day, while glyburide can be given in a dose of 20 milligrams per day. So 2500 and 20 milligrams per day. Most common side effect of metformin are the GI side effects, and it also causes vitamin B12 anemia or megaloblastic anemia, while glyburide causes maternal hypoglycemia. So the preference in order is insulin is the drug of choice, followed by metformin and then glyburide. Now, what are the obstetrical management means termination of pregnancy? So in A1 diabetes mellitus means if there is a female with over diabetes with GDM on diet, then we can terminate her pregnancy at more than 39 weeks, usually at 40 weeks. If patient is well controlled but on either insulin and OHA, then pregnancy is to be terminated at 39 weeks or up to 40 weeks, 39 to 40 weeks of pregnancy. And if the blood sugar is poorly controlled even on metformin or insulin, then pregnancy is going to get terminated a little bit early, that is at 37 to 38 weeks plus 6 days of pregnancy. In case of over diabetes mellitus, well controlled, then we can terminate at 39 weeks of pregnancy, and if it is not controlled, then it depends on the complication. Mode of delivery is always planned vaginal delivery, and induction of labor is done at the gestational age according to the diagnosis of the patient. Now, what are the indication of cesarean section? Obstetric indications are fetal distress and contracted pelvis, and if the estimated fetal weight is more than 4.5 kg in a diabetic patient, then we have to do cesarean section. And macrosomia, if there is only macrosomia, then estimated fetal weight of more than 4 kg. Now, in non-diabetic patient, if the estimated fetal weight is more than 5 kg, then we have to do a cesarean section. Intrapartum insulin requirement, in labor there is reduction in the insulin requirement. So if patient is GDM on insulin, then plasma glucose monitoring should be done during labor by a glucometer. And day of induction, morning dose. So on the day of induction of labor, we withheld the morning dose of insulin, and we measure 2 hour plasma glucose every 2 hourly. IV infusion with normal saline, also known as GI or glucose infusion, is started, plus regular insulin is added according to the blood glucose level. So NS में हम start कर सकते हैं insulin according to blood glucose level. If the blood glucose level, we start patient on NS and measure the blood glucose every 2 hours. If the blood glucose is 90 to 120, then insulin is added 0, 120 to 140, 4 unit, 140 to 186 unit, and more than 188 units of insulin are added. And we have to keep continuing this drug at a rate of 100 ml per hour, also 16 drops per minute. Now, what are the post delivery follow up of the GDM patient? So immediate postpartum care is not different with the women without GDM, but these are increased risk of developing type 2 diabetes mellitus in future, and also sepsis or infections also. So after delivery, we have to check the maternal glucose, and it is usually normal. So what we do in a GDM patient, we do 72 hours fasting PP, means after 72 hours or third day of delivery, we check for the fasting and the PP of the patient. And if the fasting is less than 126 and the postprandial is less than 200, then we can send the patient home. And after 6 weeks, we also can do OGTT followed by annually OGTT and then annual fasting blood sugar only. Now, after 48 hours of delivery, we can discharge this patient, and 6 weeks postpartum, 7 gram OGTT and glycemic index is done by ANM. Now, cutoff for normal blood glucose levels are more than 126 fbs, 75 grams 2 hours. Plasma glucose normal is less than 140, impaired glucose is 140 to 199, and diabetes more than 200. And this is in cases of PCOS OGTT. So this is followed in case of PCOS patient, and as per ACOG guidelines, 75 grams GTT is done between 4 to 12 weeks of pregnancy also.